$200,000 have disappeared from your account, said the accountant. It was my daughter. She stole it to take her in-laws on a luxury trip to Europe, saying, "These people deserve the best." I was left penniless, almost losing my home and business, but she didn't know. I have her. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. The phone rang while I was reviewing invoices from our penniless supplier. Mid-afternoon light filtered through the blinds of my home office, casting stripes across spreadsheets I'd been studying for the past hour. I almost didn't answer. The number showed Casa Baker's main line, and Heather rarely called unless something needed immediate attention. "Vernon, we have a serious problem." Her voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Heather Nelson had managed my restaurant's books for 8 years, always calm, always measured. Not today. $200,000 transferred out of the business account 3 days ago. I just discovered it during reconciliation. The recipient account, I don't recognize it at all. My pen stopped moving. The invoice blurred. Say that again. 200,000, gone, 3 days ago. I pulled my laptop closer, fingers fumbling with the password. My hands had started shaking. That's impossible. I would have seen the notification. The transfer went through on a Friday evening. You probably had alerts turned off for the weekend. While she talked, I navigated to the business account. The balance stared back at me, impossibly low. The kitchen renovation, the mortgage payment due in 12 days, my quarterly tax estimate. All of it depended on that money. Who authorized this? My voice sounded strange, distant. That's what I'm trying to figure out. The system shows proper authorization codes, so it wasn't flagged as suspicious. Vernon, someone with legitimate access, did this. My mind raced through the short list. Me, Heather, and one other name I'd added 2 years ago during my emergency surgery scare, someone I'd trusted completely. "I need to call you back." I hung up before she could respond. Stephanie, my daughter, the only other person with emergency account access. I dialed her number. It rang 4 times, then voicemail. Her cheerful voice telling me to leave a message. I didn't. I called again. Same result. A 3rd time. 4th. By the 6th call, my jaw ached from clenching. She was declining them, not missing them, actively rejecting each call. I walked to the kitchen, needing water, needing to move, needing to do something with my hands besides dial that number again. The glass trembled as I filled it. Through the doorway, I could see Michael sprawled on my couch, one leg draped over the armrest, remote control in hand. My son-in-law, who'd moved into my house 3 months ago with his parents after some vague explanation about temporary housing issues. Temporary was beginning to feel permanent. I'd agreed because Stephanie asked, because she was my daughter and I wanted to help, because I told myself family came first. That evening, I cooked dinner mechanically. Chicken with rice, vegetables, nothing fancy. My mind kept circling back to those declined calls, to that missing money, to the authorization code only Stephanie possessed. Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway as I was plating. He glanced at the food, then at me, his lip curling. "What is this supposed to be, Vernon? Looks like something my dog wouldn't eat. You really should learn to cook properly." I set the plate down carefully. Behind Michael, his father James stepped into view, phone still in his hand. "Michael's right," James added, his voice dripping with amusement. "This is exactly what I'd expect. Primitive food from a primitive man. Angela and I are accustomed to a certain standard." The words hung in the air. Primitive man. In my house, eating my food, sleeping in my guest rooms. Something cold settled in my chest. "If you don't like it," I said quietly, "you know where the door is. My house, my food, my rules." Michael laughed, actually laughed. "Relax, old man. Just trying to help you improve." I didn't respond, didn't trust myself to. Instead, I carried my plate to the office and closed the door. The emergency contact paperwork sat in the 3rd drawer, exactly where I'd filed it after that hospital scare. I spread it across the desk. There was Stephanie's signature, her authorization code, her promise to protect my interests if something happened to me. I'd handed her the keys to everything. My phone sat dark and silent. No return call, no explanation. Just that emptiness where my daughter's voice should have been. I opened another folder slowly, pulled out the house deed. 23 years I'd been paying this mortgage. 3 years left until it was mine. completely and finally mine. Except now that mortgage payment was gone, stolen, by someone who had my trust, my love, my complete faith. I stared at the deed for a long time. The names of everyone living under this roof scrolled through my mind. Michael, James, Angela, all of them here because of Stephanie. All of them here because I'd said yes. Maybe I didn't need the police after all. Maybe I had something better. The night stretched on. I couldn't sleep, wouldn't sleep. Instead, I pulled every bank statement from the past 6 months, spreading them across my desk in chronological order. The desk lamp created a small island of light in the dark house. Beyond my office door, silence. Michael and his parents had retreated to their rooms hours ago, oblivious. I used a yellow highlighter to mark every significant transaction. Payroll, supplier payments, the equipment loan. Each one represented a decision, a responsibility. A piece of the business I'd built over 15 years. And there, in the middle of February's statement, the transfer that gutted everything, $200,000. Transaction date, 3 days ago. Authorization code, SB2947. Stephanie's code. The one only she knew, the one she'd chosen herself. Her initials and birth year combined. My own daughter. I cross-referenced the timestamp. Friday, 6:47 p.m. I'd been at the restaurant that evening, handling the dinner rush. She'd waited until I was occupied, distracted. That wasn't coincidence. That was calculation. Around 3 in the morning, I spoke to the empty room. Her code, her authorization. 3 days ago, there's no mistake, my own daughter. Saying it aloud didn't make it easier, just made it real. Dawn broke slowly, pink light creeping across the horizon. I walked to my bedroom window and watched the sun rise over the desert landscape. Another day beginning, my 62nd year on this earth, and I was learning that blood didn't guarantee loyalty. I picked up my phone, dialed Stephanie's number with deliberate slowness. She declined it, instantly, before the first ring finished. I called again. Same result. 2 calls, 2 rejections. I showered, dressed, made coffee I didn't drink. By 8 o'clock, I was in my car heading to Casa Baker. The morning commute passed in a blur. Traffic lights, other vehicles, familiar streets I navigated on autopilot. My hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly. The restaurant smelled like corn masa and cilantro when I walked in. Morning prep was already underway, the kitchen staff moving through their routines. Heather was waiting in my office, a manila folder thick with documents on my desk. "Look here, Vernon." She opened the folder, pointing to a highlighted section. Transaction ID 847392, authorization code SB2947. That's Stephanie's personal code, the one only she knows. This wasn't hacked. This was deliberate. I stared at the numbers, the evidence, the proof. $200,000, I said, barely above a whisper. She knew what this money was for. She knew. Heather's expression was carefully neutral. "I've already contacted the bank. They confirmed the authorization was legitimate, meaning whoever used that code had legal access. Vernon, I'm so sorry." Legal access, as if that made it acceptable, as if that justified anything. I spent the day trying to focus on work, reviewed vendor contracts, approved next week's schedule, discussed menu changes with the head chef, but my mind kept drifting back to that transaction record, to those declined calls. That evening, I returned home to find Michael and his parents in the living room, laughing about something on James's phone. They looked comfortable, relaxed, as if this was their house and not mine. I stopped in the doorway. They didn't notice me at first. "Where's Stephanie?" I asked. The laughter died. Michael glanced up, that familiar smirk forming. "Not your business, old man. Stephanie's an adult. She doesn't need to report her whereabouts to you." I stepped fully into the room. "This is my house. I'm asking where my daughter is. That's a simple question." Michael's smirk widened. "And I'm giving you a simple answer. Mind your own business." James chuckled. Angela said nothing, just watched me with vague amusement. I turned and walked away. No point arguing, no point explaining. They'd made their position clear. I was the outsider in my own home. Back in my office, I closed the door and sat at my desk. My phone lay face down. I picked it up, dialed Stephanie's number again. Declined. 3rd rejection. I set the phone down carefully. Next to it, The property deed sat where I'd left it that morning. I pulled it closer, studying the legal description of my home, the square footage, the lot boundaries, everything that made this property mine. 3 calls, 3 rejections. I understood now. This wasn't confusion or fear keeping Stephanie away. This was choice, deliberate avoidance. She knew exactly what she'd done, knew I'd discovered it, knew I'd be calling. And she was choosing silence. The 4th call could wait. I had planning to do. Because the house was mine. Everything in it was mine. And I was done asking permission to protect what was mine. 15 calls, 15 rejections. I'd stopped counting the hours since Heather first told me about the missing money. My restaurant office felt smaller than usual, the walls closing in. The Friday afternoon rush hummed beyond my door. Orders being called, dishes clattering, the familiar rhythm of Casa Baker in full swing. But inside this room, time had slowed to something thick and suffocating. I stared at my phone's call log, a vertical column of outgoing attempts to Stephanie, each one marked with that red icon. Declined, declined, declined. 15 identical rejections over the past day and a half. I was reaching for the phone to try a 16th time when it rang in my hand. Stephanie's name blazed across the screen. My heart hammered. I answered before the second ring. Stephanie. Silence. Not dead air. I could hear her breathing. Controlled, measured. Stephanie, I repeated. The money. $200,000 from the restaurant account. Did you take it? The pause stretched so long, I thought she'd hung up. Then, flat as stone. Yes, I took it. 2 words that confirmed everything. 2 words that should have been impossible. Why? My voice cracked despite my effort to stay controlled. Do you understand what you've done? That money was for the kitchen renovation, for the mortgage. Why would you? James and Angela always dreamed of seeing Europe. She cut me off like I was wasting her time. They never had the chance. Michael's parents sacrificed everything for him. His education, his opportunities. This was the least I could do. I gripped the desk edge, knuckles going white. You stole $200,000 to send your in-laws on vacation? These people deserve the best, Dad. Her tone carried that self-righteous edge I'd heard more and more over the past year. They raised an incredible man. They earned this trip. And you're wealthy. You have a restaurant. You have this house. You can afford it. I stood, pacing the narrow space between desk and wall. Stephanie, listen to me. The bank will foreclose on the house. The restaurant needs those renovations to pass inspection. Without that money, I could lose everything. Do you understand? Everything. You're exaggerating. Dismissive. Bored almost. You always do this. Make everything dramatic. You'll figure it out. You always do. Find the money somewhere else. This is my life's work. My home. Our home. It stopped being our home a long time ago, Dad. I have my own family now. And they needed this. The line went dead. I stood frozen, phone still pressed against my ear, listening to nothing. Slowly, I lowered it. The screen showed call ended and a duration. 4 minutes, 37 seconds. 4.5 minutes to learn. Your daughter considers you disposable. The restaurant sounds faded to white noise. I sank into my chair, staring at that call duration. Stephanie hadn't called to apologize. She'd called because my persistence annoyed her. She'd called to tell me to stop bothering her. She'd called to justify theft. And she'd felt justified. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Something else had taken over. Something cold and crystalline. Clear. I picked up the phone again. Not to call her. Not to try reasoning with someone who'd decided I didn't matter. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. David Baker. No relation. We just shared a surname. A lawyer I'd met at a small business association meeting 2 years back. We'd exchanged cards over coffee. I'd filed his number away, never expecting to use it. Until now. He answered on the 3rd ring. David Baker. David, this is Vernon Baker. We met at the business association meeting. I need a consultation about property rights and tenant situations. I have people living in my house, and I need to understand my legal options. Can you see me Monday? Of course, Vernon. Monday at 10 works. A pause. Professional curiosity in his voice. Can you give me a brief overview? I'd rather discuss the details in person. It's complicated. And I want to make sure I handle everything properly, legally properly. Understood. Monday at 10. Bring any relevant documentation. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet office. Outside my door, Casa Baker continued its Friday rhythm. Inside, something had shifted. My daughter had stolen from me, justified it, dismissed my survival as inconvenient drama. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a legal pad. Started making a list of every document I'd need to gather this weekend. The victim part of this story was over. Friday evening, I drove home in silence. No radio, no distractions. Just the rhythmic sound of tires on asphalt and my own thoughts organizing themselves into something methodical. Michael's car sat in my driveway next to his parents' sedan. Both vehicles looking permanent, settled, like they belonged there. Inside, laughter echoed from the living room. I walked past without stopping, straight to my office, closing the door behind me. The file cabinet surrendered everything I needed: property deed, mortgage documents, insurance papers. I spread them across my desk in careful rows, then pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. Michael, James, and Angela had been living in my house for exactly 1 year. Not 3 months like I'd been telling myself. 1 full year since Stephanie had called, asking if they could stay temporarily while they sorted out some housing situation she'd never fully explained. No rental agreement, no lease, no contract of any kind, just my verbal yes because my daughter asked. I wrote that down. No written agreement, verbal arrangement only. 1 year occupancy. Saturday morning, I returned to Casa Baker before the weekend rush. Heather looked up from her computer when I entered, concern flickering across her face. "Vernon, are you okay? You've been different since Friday." "I'm handling a personal matter, Heather. Legal but complicated. I'll need you to manage things this week while I sort it out. Can I count on you?" "Always, whatever you need." In my office, I dug through the filing cabinet until I found what I was looking for. The authorization paperwork from a year ago. The document that gave Stephanie emergency access to my accounts. I held it up to the light, studying my own signature. Michael had presented this during Sunday dinner, casual and concerned. "Just being prepared, Vernon. You know, in case something happens to you. Stephanie should be able to handle things, just in case." And I'd signed it, handed them the keys without a second thought. I took photos of every page with my phone, then filed the original back carefully. Evidence preservation, that's what David would probably call it. Saturday afternoon, I called the bank. It took 3 transfers before I reached someone who could access the transaction details. "Yes, Mr. Baker, I can confirm the receiving account belongs to Elite European Escapes, a luxury travel concierge service. The transaction processed on February 12th, and according to our records, travel commenced February 14th. February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2 days before Heather discovered the theft, 3 days before Stephanie finally answered my call. "Thank you," I said quietly. That's all I needed to know. Back home, I locked myself in the office again. The house pulsed with activity around me, television sounds, conversations, the clatter of dishes, Michael's family living their lives in my space. I created a timeline on fresh paper. February 12th, transaction authorized. February 14th, James and Angela depart for Europe. February 15th, Heather discovers the theft. February 17th, Stephanie admits everything. February 18th, legal consultation scheduled. They'd planned this. The trip was already booked before the money moved. Stephanie had authorized the transfer knowing exactly what it meant, knowing Heather would eventually notice, knowing I'd call. She just hadn't cared. Sunday evening, I organized everything into labeled folders, property documents in one, bank statements in another, authorization paperwork in a third, the timeline sheet on top. I sat back, studying my work. 48 hours ago, I'd been a man searching desperately for answers, hoping this was all some terrible mistake. Now I knew better. This wasn't a mistake. This was theft, premeditated, calculated, executed while I was too trusting to see it coming. Monday morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, straightening my tie. The folders lay arranged on my bed behind me, ready to go. I'd spent the weekend gathering evidence. Now I needed to learn exactly how to use it. David's office was across town, a 40-minute drive in morning traffic. I checked my watch, 9:30. 30 minutes until my appointment. 30 minutes until I stopped being the victim in this story. Michael's family was living in my house, eating my food, breathing my air. They'd calculated that I was weak, disposable, someone whose life's work could be stolen to fund their European fantasy. They were about to learn what a man has left when you take away everything he thought mattered. The drive home from David's office took 20 minutes. The envelope sat on the passenger seat, notarized, legal, final. I'd spent the week gathering evidence, consulting with an attorney, and preparing for this moment. Now it was here. My driveway looked the same as always. Michael's car next to his parents' sedan, both vehicles claiming space like permanent fixtures. I picked up the envelope and walked toward my front door. Inside, I could hear the television, Michael's laughter, the comfortable sounds of people who believed they owned the space they occupied. My hand tightened on the envelope as I pushed open the door. Michael sat sprawled across my couch, feet on my coffee table, remote in hand. He glanced up when I entered, barely acknowledging my presence before turning back to the screen. I crossed directly to where he sat and extended the envelope. No greeting, no preamble. This is a 30-day eviction notice, notarized and filed with the county. You have until March 27th to vacate the premises. Michael's hand froze halfway to the envelope. He looked at it, then at me, then snatched the paper. His eyes scanned the document. I watched comprehension dawn across his face. What? He shot to his feet. Have you completely lost your mind? We're your family. You can't just... Read it. Footsteps rushed from the kitchen. Stephanie appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. Dad, what's happening? What is this? I turned to face her for the first time since our phone conversation. Exactly what it says. You're being evicted. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. Her face went pale. But where will we go? We don't have money for rent, for deposits. Dad, please. You had my $200,000. Figure it out. Michael's head snapped up. You know about that? I know everything. The theft, the luxury travel agency, your parents' February 14th departure to Paris. Everything. I met his stare without blinking. And now you know something too. This is my house, and you're leaving. The next week passed in a strange dance of avoidance. Michael oscillated between aggressive threats and desperate appeals to family loyalty. Stephanie cried. She begged. She left voicemails I didn't listen to. I left for the restaurant before they woke, returned after they had retreated to their bedroom. When they tried to corner me for talks, I simply walked away. There was nothing to discuss. By the end of the week, I sat in my restaurant office staring at my phone. Stephanie's name appeared, call number 20. I let it ring through to voicemail. Then I scrolled to another number, international calling. The hotel in Paris where James and Angela were staying. David's investigator had provided the information. I put the phone on speaker and dialed. It rang 4 times. Then James's voice, casual and bright. Hello? James, this is Vernon. A pause. Background noise, clinking glasses, conversation in French. Vernon, really? You're calling us in the middle of our vacation with your domestic squabbles? Angela's voice now, laughing. Handle your own problems. We're in Paris. Don't spoil this for us. I called to inform you that Michael and Stephanie have been served with a 30-day eviction notice. You'll need to make other arrangements when you return. Silence. Then Angela again, voice sharp. You can't do that. That's their home. No, it's my home. They're leaving March 27th. Enjoy the rest of your trip. You're making a mistake. The trip that cost me $200,000. But you already knew that, didn't you? I hung up before she could respond. 22 calls from Stephanie now. She'd started leaving voicemails. I didn't listen to them. There was nothing she could say that would change March 27th, marked on my calendar in red ink. 3 weeks away. But something Angela said during that call nagged at me. She'd mentioned Michael handling paperwork for me last year, helping me organize, being useful. What paperwork? I opened my file cabinet and started pulling folders, tax documents, insurance papers, banking records I'd filed away without reviewing thoroughly. Michael had offered to help organize everything last spring. I'd been grateful. Now I wondered what else I'd find. I started with the tax documents, then insurance papers, then banking records I'd filed away without thoroughly reviewing. Michael had offered to help organize my paperwork last spring. I'd been grateful. Stupid. Around 2 a.m, I found it. A credit card statement, misfiled in a folder labeled Miscellaneous 2024. Except the card wasn't mine. The number was unfamiliar, but the name on it read Vernon Baker. I spread 6 years of financial documents across my office floor, cross-referencing dates. The credit card had been opened 13 months ago, right when Michael started his helpful organizing. $35,000 in charges, designer clothes, expensive restaurants, electronics, none of which I'd purchased, none of which I'd benefited from. The next morning, I met Heather at Casa Baker before opening. Her face went pale as she studied the statements. Vernon, these charges go back 13 months, $35,000. None of this was you? I never saw these statements. He must have changed the mailing address. Can you track down the billing address? Already looking. Give me an hour. While Heather worked, I sat in my office making another call. Michael's former employer, a financial services firm in downtown Phoenix. David's investigator had provided that information too. The office manager was careful, professional. I can't discuss specifics due to liability concerns, but I can say Michael Gonzalez's departure was not voluntary. There were irregularities, client complaints about account discrepancies. Nothing we could prove definitively enough to pursue charges, but enough to terminate employment immediately. I took notes. Pattern of behavior, financial misconduct, history. 3 days later, Michael filed a legal challenge to the eviction. His chief attorney claimed oral rental agreement and established residency rights. A court hearing was scheduled for March 20th. Michael cornered me in the hallway that evening, paperwork in hand. My attorney says we have rights. We've lived here over a year. That establishes tenancy. You can't just throw us out without cause. We'll see you in court, old man. I looked at him calmly. March 20th. I'll be there. Will you be able to afford your attorney when you lose? His smirk faltered. Meanwhile, the bank sent an overdue mortgage notice. The stolen money was supposed to cover that payment. Without it, I was facing foreclosure. I sat across from a loan officer the following afternoon, signing emergency loan papers that put Casa Baker itself at risk. Mr. Baker, this emergency loan puts your restaurant at significant risk. If you default, we can foreclose on Casa Baker. Are you certain about this? My hand didn't shake. I'm certain I'm not losing my house because someone stole from me. The restaurant survived 15 years. It'll survive this. That evening, I drove to David Baker's office with everything I'd found. The credit card application, the forged signature, Michael's handwriting clearly different from mine, the statements showing 13 months of fraud. David studied the documents, his expression darkening. This is identity theft and fraud, clear cut. We can file a police report and add this to your court case. It demonstrates a pattern of financial exploitation. He looked up. But Vernon, are you prepared to see your daughter's husband arrested? I didn't hesitate. He's not my daughter's husband anymore. He's a criminal living in my house. File the report. David picked up his phone. 5 days until the hearing. 5 days until March 20th. My phone buzzed constantly. Stephanie's 35th call. I'd stopped counting individually. Just let them accumulate like evidence of her desperation. Now, sitting in David's conference room while he spoke with the police department, I watched him write down information, case numbers, reference codes, the official machinery of justice beginning to turn. He hung up and slid a piece of paper across the table. Case number for the fraud investigation. They'll contact you within 48 hours for a formal statement. I stared at the 7 digits. The moment I stopped protecting my daughter from her choices, reduced to a reference number. The court hearing was 5 days away. Michael thought he was fighting an eviction. He had no idea criminal charges were coming. I folded the paper carefully and put it in my pocket. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out, ready to ignore Stephanie's 36th attempt. But the screen showed unknown number. My finger hovered over the decline button. Something made me hesitate. I answered. The courthouse steps were worn smooth by decades of people seeking justice, or avoiding it. I climbed them slowly, feeling the weight of the folder in my hand. March 20th. The eviction hearing. 5 days since I'd filed the police report about the credit card fraud. Michael still didn't know about that. He was about to. Through security, down the corridor, Michael stood ahead with his attorney, a young man in an ill-fitting suit, gesturing confidently while reviewing notes. Stephanie sat on a bench nearby, staring at the floor. She looked up as I approached. Our eyes met briefly. She looked away first. I walked past them into the courtroom. David was already at the plaintiff's table, documents arranged in neat stacks. I sat beside him, placed my folder down, and waited. The bailiff called the case. We stood. The judge entered, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. Michael's attorney went first. "Your Honor, we're talking about a family here." His voice carried theatrical concern. "My client and his wife have made this house their home for over a year. They have established residency. There was an oral agreement with Mr. Baker that they could stay while they got back on their feet. Now he's trying to throw them out with nowhere to go." I watched the judge's face. Nothing. Professional neutrality. David stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to present 3 key pieces of evidence." He walked to the bench, handed up documents. First, the property deed showing Mr. Vernon Baker as sole owner. Second, 12 months of bank statements showing 0 rental payments received. Third, Mr. Baker's sworn statement that this was a temporary family arrangement that has been abused. There was no oral rental agreement. There was family generosity that has been exploited. The judge studied the papers. I watched her eyes move across the pages, saw the moment her expression shifted from neutral to decided. "The evidence is clear." She looked up. "No rent has been paid. No written or enforceable oral agreement exists. The property belongs solely to Mr. Baker. While I understand this is a family matter, the law is straightforward. The eviction notice is legally valid. The respondents must vacate by March 27th. Court is adjourned." The gavel fell. Michael's attorney tried to speak. The judge was already leaving. I stood, collected my folder, and walked out. David followed. "The police liaison office is 2 floors down," he said quietly. We took the stairs. The officer behind the desk looked bored until I spread the credit card documents across his counter. Then his expression sharpened. "Credit card fraud, identity theft. You have the application with forged signature, statements showing charges you didn't authorize, documentation that you never received these bills." He pulled out a form. "This is solid. We'll open an investigation immediately. Detective will contact you within 48 hours. I signed the complaint, watched him stamp it. Case opened, active investigation. Outside, spring air hit my face. My phone rang. Stephanie's name, her 50th call. This time, I answered, "Dad, please." Her voice broke immediately. "Please don't do this." The police called Michael. They want him to come in for questioning about a credit card. "Please, just withdraw the complaint. We'll figure out the eviction. We'll leave. Just please. Will you return my $200,000? Silence. Long enough that I knew the answer. "It's gone." A whisper. "The trip cost..." "Dad, it's gone." "Then you have your answer. Deal with the police. Don't call me again." I ended the call, blocked her number. In the parking garage, I sat in my car, engine off. David had given me another folder after the hearing, papers for a civil lawsuit against Stephanie, recovery of the full amount, plus damages and legal fees. I pulled out my phone and texted David. "File the civil suit, all of it, recovery plus damages." His response came immediately. "We'll prepare this week. Are you certain?" I typed back, "Completely certain." 7 days until they had to leave. Then I'd make sure she understood that stealing has consequences even when it's from family, especially when it's from family. I started the engine and drove home, my home. The boxes started appearing 3 days after the court hearing, cheap cardboard from a discount store, sealed with inadequate tape. They stacked them in the hallway, a growing monument to consequences. March 25th. 2 days before, they had to be gone. I watched from my office as Michael carried boxes to a rental truck parked in my driveway. Stephanie followed with smaller items, her movements mechanical. They didn't speak to each other, didn't speak to me. By March 27th, the truck was packed. I stood at my front window as they made their final trip. A lamp, a garbage bag of clothes, some kitchen items that weren't mine, but I didn't care about claiming. The truck pulled away. I watched until it disappeared around the corner. Then, I walked through my house, room by room, opening doors, checking closets, reclaiming my space, empty, clean, mine. That evening, I was at Casa Baker reviewing inventory when Angela burst through the door. She wore expensive clothes from Europe, linen pants, silk blouse. Her tan was fresh. Her expression was venomous. You should be ashamed, loud enough that other diners turned to stare. Kicking your own daughter and her husband out of your house. Calling the police on Michael like he's some criminal. We raised a good man, and you're trying to destroy him because you're bitter and vindictive. I stood slowly, didn't raise my voice. Your son stole $35,000 using my identity. Your vacation cost me $200,000 that my daughter stole from my business account. The only thing I'm destroying is the lie that any of you are victims. She sputtered, searching for words. That trip was a gift. Stephanie wanted to give us something special. You have money. You could afford it. Then she should have asked. Stealing isn't giving, and now you know exactly what your gift cost. My house, my business nearly foreclosed, and your son facing criminal charges. Enjoy your memories of Paris. They're expensive. You'll leave my restaurant, now. Or I'll call the police for trespassing. Choose. She left. 2 days later, 2 detectives sat at my kitchen table. I walked them through 13 months of credit card statements, pointing out charges I never made, locations I never visited, purchases I never authorized. Mr. Baker, you've documented this meticulously. Detective Martinez photographed each page. The signature analysis alone is damning. Your actual signature versus the application signature show clear discrepancies in at least 8 different points. I didn't know the card existed until 3 weeks ago. He changed the billing address to a P.O. box. That's standard fraud behavior. This is one of the clearest cases I've seen. At David's office the following week, I signed the civil suit documents. My signature was steady. David slid a second set of papers across his desk. The lawsuit seeks full recovery plus 20% interest and legal fees, roughly $240,000 total. But this second document is a structured repayment agreement, 10 years, monthly payments of $2,100, 8% interest. If she signs it and makes every payment on time, we drop the lawsuit and don't pursue criminal charges for the embezzlement. Miss one payment, though. And it all proceeds, civil and criminal. She needs to understand this is the only mercy she gets. Do you think she'll take the deal? I don't know, but I'm giving her the choice I never got. 3 days later, my phone rang. Stephanie. Her 65th call since I'd unblocked her number to give her this option. I answered. Dad, they served me with a lawsuit. $240,000. My attorney says I could face criminal charges too. Embezzlement. Breach of trust. Dad, I don't have this money. Michael doesn't have money. His legal fees for the fraud case are already drowning us. I can't. You can sign the repayment agreement. David sent it to your attorney yesterday. $2,100 a month for 10 years. Every payment on time, or the deal is void, and both the civil suit and criminal referral proceed immediately. That's your choice, Stephanie, the only one you have. Silence. 48 hours to decide, I said. After that, the offer expires. I hung up. That evening, I stood at my kitchen window, watching the sunset paint, Phoenix in orange and red. March ending. April beginning. The repayment agreement sat on my table. By week's end, I'd know whether Stephanie would take responsibility and spend 10 years paying back what she stole, or whether she'd refuse and face prosecution. Either way, I'd already won. My house was mine. My business was securing recovery. Michael faced criminal charges. The law was working exactly as it should. But there was one more thing I needed to do, one final step to ensure this never happened again. I walked to my office and pulled out a different folder, the one labeled Last Will and Testament. Time to make some changes. Stephanie signed the repayment agreement 47 hours and 32 minutes after I gave her the ultimatum. Not quite the deadline, but close enough to show she'd agonized over it. I imagined her sitting in that cramped apartment, pen in hand, Michael probably hovering nearby. Both of them calculating whether 10 years of payments was better than criminal prosecution. They'd chosen correctly, barely. David placed the notarized document on his desk between us. Her signature looked shaky, the letters uneven. I could see where she'd pressed too hard on the S of Stephanie, the ink slightly smudged. Good. Let her hand shake. Let her feel the weight of what she was signing. She signed it. Every payment tracked, every clause binding. David opened a fireproof safe behind his desk, filed the agreement inside. The metal door clicked shut with finality. Miss one payment, even by a day, and we can trigger criminal referral immediately. This is ironclad, Vernon. She's legally admitted to taking the money and agreed to the terms. No court in Arizona would side with her if she tries to back out. 10 years, 120 payments. She'll think about what she did every single month. That's what I wanted. I leaned back in my chair. Every first of the month, that automatic transfer will go through. She won't be able to forget, won't be able to pretend it didn't happen. David nodded slowly. The psychological aspect of monthly payments, it's often more effective than a lump sum. Even if she could somehow scrape together the full amount, which she can't, this way ensures lasting accountability. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared over the past week, research printed from the Arizona Small Business Support Foundation's website, notes in my handwriting, a draft document I'd worked on late at night. I want to revise my estate plan, complete revision. Stephanie is removed entirely as beneficiary. Everything, the house, Casa Baker, all assets, my investment accounts, goes to the Arizona Small Business Support Foundation. David leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting to something more cautious. Vernon, this is permanent. Are you certain? People sometimes reconcile with family over time. I've seen it happen. Anger fades, circumstances change. Are you prepared to make this decision irrevocable? I'm certain. She stole from my business to fund a vacation for her in-laws. This foundation helps business owners who face exactly what she put me through, the threat of losing everything they've built because of financial crisis. It's perfect. My life's work will help people who actually deserve it. He studied me for a long moment, the way attorneys do when they're trying to determine if their client is acting rationally or emotionally. I need to ask, as your attorney, is this decision made from a place of revenge or from a place of principle? Both, and I'm at peace with that. I met his eyes directly. She made her choice when she took my money and dismissed my survival as inconvenient drama. I'm making mine by ensuring my legacy goes to people who actually value what it takes to build something from nothing. People who understand that a restaurant isn't just a business. It's years of work, sacrifice, reputation. File the will. He pulled out a legal pad and began taking notes. Over the next hour, we went through every detail, the exact wording, the designation of the foundation as sole beneficiary, the explicit clause removing Stephanie, the appointment of David himself as executor. I want it clear, I said, not ambiguous, not open to interpretation. I want the will to state explicitly that Stephanie Baker Gonzalez is removed as beneficiary due to... I paused, choosing my words carefully. What should the language be? We'll say due to irreconcilable breach of trust and fiduciary duty. Legal, clear, and it protects the will from challenges. She can't claim undue influence or temporary anger if we document the specific cause. The signing happened 3 weeks later, in mid-May. David had arranged everything with precision, a notary public, 2 witnesses, people from his office who didn't know me personally, ensuring no conflicts of interest. Everything official and legally unassailable. We sat in David's conference room, the will laid out on the table, multiple pages of legal language that boiled down to one simple truth. Stephanie got nothing. David read from the standard legal script, his voice formal. Mr. Baker, do you declare this to be your last will and testament, prepared of your own free will, under no duress or undue influence? I do. And do you understand that this will supersede all previous wills and completely removes your daughter Stephanie Baker Gonzalez as a beneficiary, with all assets designated to the Arizona Small Business Support Foundation? My pen didn't waver as I positioned it over the signature line. I understand completely. That's exactly what I intend. I signed. Vernon Baker, the same signature I'd been writing for 62 years. The witnesses signed. The notary stamped her seal, the raised impression pressing into the paper, making it official. Done. I sat back, looking at the completed document. Everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, all of it redirected away from the daughter who'd betrayed me and toward strangers who would appreciate it. I want a certified copy sent to her, return receipt requested. David's eyebrows rose slightly. You want her to know? Now? Yes, I want her to understand what she's lost. Not just my presence in her life now, but any future benefit from my death. Let her make those payments every month, knowing there's nothing waiting at the end. No inheritance to fall back on. No safety net. David paused. That's remarkably cold-blooded, Vernon. She was cold-blooded when she stole from me. I'm just matching her energy. David nodded slowly. I'll prepare a cover letter explaining the contents and its immediate legal effect. Professional language, but the message will be clear. Late June arrived with the oppressive heat Phoenix is famous for. I stood at the post office counter, watching the clerk weigh the envelope. Certified mail, return receipt requested. Inside, the copy of my new will and David's carefully worded letter explaining that Stephanie had been disinherited, effective immediately, irrevocably. The clerk stamped it, scanned it, handed me the receipt. Signature required on delivery, she confirmed. Good, I want proof she received it. You'll get notification when it's signed for. Professional, devastating, irreversible. 3 days later, I was at Casa Baker reviewing vendor contracts when my phone rang. Stephanie's name flashed on the screen. Her 88th call since February. I'd been keeping count without meaning to, each notification adding to the total, a mathematical proof of her desperation. I watched it ring, once, twice, 3 times. My thumb hovered over the answer button. For a moment, just a moment, I wondered what she'd say, how she'd phrase it, whether she'd cry or rage or try to manipulate me one more time. Then I set the phone face down on my desk and returned to reviewing the contract in front of me. We were switching tamale suppliers. The numbers needed to be verified. She'd read the will. The return receipt had arrived yesterday. Her signature on the proof of delivery, shaky like her signature on the repayment agreement. She knew what she'd lost. Not just me now, but everything after I was gone. The voicemail notification appeared. 3 minutes, 47 seconds. Almost 4 minutes of whatever she wanted to say. I picked up the phone, looked at it, turned it over in my hand. Whatever she had to say about the will, about her future, about the inheritance she'd never receive, none of it mattered anymore. I pressed delete without listening. The agreement was signed. The will was filed. My restaurant was secure. My house was mine. My legacy would help people who deserved it. Summer was here. Casa Baker needed a new menu for the season. Heather had mentioned expanding our vegetarian options. Life moved forward. I had work to do. August came with the kind of heat that makes Phoenix shimmer, the kind that distorts the horizon and makes the asphalt soft underfoot. 6 months since Heather's phone call changed everything. 6 months since I learned what my daughter truly valued. Half a year of rebuilding what she'd tried to destroy. Casa Baker's lunch rush had just ended. I stood at the kitchen window, watching my staff clean and prep for dinner service. The rhythm was familiar, comforting. The clatter of dishes, the hiss of the industrial dishwasher, the low conversation of my line cooks discussing tomorrow's special. Normal. This was normal now. Vernon, these numbers are remarkable. Heather spread the quarterly report across my desk in the office. Her finger traced the revenue line, climbing steadily upward. Despite everything that happened in February, despite the emergency loan, we're not just recovered, we're ahead of last year. The new menu is performing exceptionally. The summer vegetarian options are outselling our projections. I studied the figures. Revenue up 18%. The emergency loan completely paid off. Mortgage current. Business account healthy. All the accounts that had looked so precarious in February were now solid. We survived. That's what matters. Building something means being able to weather storms, even when your own family creates them. I closed the folder. Heather, you kept things running when I was dealing with everything. I won't forget that. She nodded, her expression understanding. She'd been there the day of that first phone call. She'd watched me discover the theft. She'd helped me document the fraud. She'd never asked questions beyond what was necessary. Never pushed for details I wasn't ready to share. That was loyalty. Real loyalty. That afternoon, I sat at my computer in the office, systematically changing passwords. One account at a time, methodical, bank accounts first, personal checking, personal savings, business checking, business savings. Then investment accounts, retirement, the small stock portfolio I'd built over 40 years. Restaurant accounts, credit cards. Each new password felt like reclaiming a piece of security I'd lost. I wrote them down in a password-protected document on my computer, then backed it up to an encrypted drive. No more trusting memory, no more assuming family meant safety. The next day I drove to my bank branch and sat across from the manager I'd worked with for years. She pulled up my accounts on her computer. Mr. Baker, I'm removing Stephanie Baker Gonzalez from all authorized contact lists and replacing her with David Baker as your emergency contact and power of attorney. Just to confirm, this is your intention? Completely. She's no longer family in any meaningful sense. David's my attorney. He'll handle things properly if something happens to me. He has no emotional investment, just professional obligation. That's what I need. She clicked through screens, making changes. I understand. I see the monthly payments coming from her account. Same amount, first of every month like clockwork. I won't pry, Mr. Baker, but I want you to know you're doing the right thing protecting yourself. Whatever happened, you're handling it correctly. I appreciated that she didn't ask, didn't need the story, just saw the pattern and understood enough. That evening, I walked through my house, room by room, slowly, taking inventory of what was mine again. The living room where Michael used to sprawl across the couch. I'd bought new furniture, replaced the couch entirely, new chairs, different configuration. It didn't look like the room they'd occupied. The kitchen where I'd endured their insults about my cooking. I'd repainted it, light gray instead of the cream it had been. Fresh, clean, mine. The guest wing where Michael's family had lived for a year. Now my home office and a storage room. I'd moved my desk in, set up filing cabinets, created a proper workspace. The bedroom where they'd slept was now organized storage, labeled boxes stacked neatly on industrial shelving I'd installed myself. Reclaimed, repurposed, no trace of them left. The house felt lighter, quieter. The way it had felt before they moved in, before I'd said yes to Stephanie's request, before I'd made the mistake of trusting blood over instinct. On the 1st of August, I checked my business account on my phone while having morning coffee. The third payment had arrived exactly on schedule, $20,100. Reference number, repayment agreement. Payment 3 of 120. Processed at 12:01 a.m. The automated transfer pulling from her account the moment the date changed. 117 more to go. 9 years, 9 months of monthly reminders. Every 30th or 31st day that transfer would process. Automatic, impersonal, inevitable. That was justice. Not the hot, immediate kind. The slow, grinding, undeniable kind that lasted. Early August, David called during my afternoon prep time at the restaurant. His routine check-in, scheduled monthly. Vernon, just confirming. Stephanie's payments are arriving on schedule. 3 received, all on time, correct amounts. No contact from her attorney requesting modifications to the agreement. No attempts to renegotiate terms. And your new will is filed with the county and secured in my office safe. Everything is exactly as you wanted it. Good. That means it's working. She's learning that actions have consequences that last longer than the moment. And my legacy is protected. That's all I needed to hear. For what it's worth, David said carefully. You handled this correctly. Legally, strategically, and, if you don't mind me saying, emotionally. You didn't let anger make you reckless. You let the law work. The law is all we have when family fails. I learned that. Late one night, after closing Casa Baker, after the last employee had left and I'd locked the doors and counted the register, I sat at my desk in the office. The building was silent except for the hum of refrigeration units and the occasional creak of settling pipes. I opened the bottom drawer. In the back, under some old vendor catalogs I needed to throw away, I'd kept an old photograph. Stephanie at 8 years old, gap-toothed smile, holding a kitten we'd rescued from behind the restaurant. She'd named it Cinnamon because of its orange fur. 2nd grade. She'd wanted to be a veterinarian. Had made me check out library books about animal medicine. Had drawn pictures of herself in a white coat with a stethoscope. I picked up the photo, studied her face, that child with the bright eyes, and the gentle way she'd held that kitten. You were 8 in this photo. I spoke to the image, my voice quiet in the empty restaurant. 2nd grade. You wanted to be a veterinarian. You loved animals. You laughed all the time. You made me laugh. I traced the edge of the photograph with my thumb. I don't know when you changed, when Michael and his parents became more important than everything I gave you, when money became more valuable than integrity. But this person who stole from me, who dismissed my survival as dramatic, she's not the child in this picture. That child is gone, and I have to let her go. I held the photo a moment longer. Then I slid it back into the drawer, closed it gently, not thrown away. I wasn't cruel enough for that, but put away. Out of sight, stored with other memories of things that no longer existed. Then I pulled out my phone, opened the call log. The list of missed calls stretched back months. Stephanie's name repeated again and again. 88 total. 88 attempts to reach me since that day in February when Heather had told me about the missing money. I selected all, pressed delete. A confirmation dialog appeared. Delete 88 call records? Yes. The list cleared. Empty, clean. Then I found her contact information, selected it, scrolled to the bottom where the option sat in red text, block contact. I'd blocked her before, then unblocked her to give her the choice about the repayment agreement. Now I was blocking her one final time, for good. I pressed it, confirmed, done, clean slate, no more calls, no more voicemails, no more chances. The restaurant would open tomorrow at 11. Heather had mentioned we might need to expand the kitchen staff. Business was that good. Word of mouth was bringing in new customers. The reviews online were strong. Casa Baker was thriving. The house needed some minor repairs before fall. A section of fence in the backyard, some weather stripping around the doors. Normal maintenance, normal concerns. Life continued. Normal life. My life. The life I'd built and nearly lost and then fought to reclaim. 6 months ago, I'd nearly lost everything because I trusted family over instinct, blood over judgment. Now I had my business, stronger than before, my home, truly mine again, my independence, hard-won and carefully guarded, and a will that would help other people avoid what I'd survived, that would turn my life's work into someone else's second chance. Justice wasn't pretty. It wasn't painless. And it cost me a daughter. But I'd chosen law over sentiment, principle over blood, accountability over forgiveness. And I'd do it again. Every time. Without hesitation. The next payment would arrive in 3 days. September 1st. Payment 4 of 120. 9 years and 8 months remaining. I wouldn't even check the account when it came. The bank would notify me if it didn't arrive, if she missed a payment, if she defaulted on the agreement. That was enough. I stood from my desk, stretched, turned off the office light, walked through the dark restaurant to the front door. Through the window, Phoenix at night, light spreading across the valley, the city alive and indifferent to my small drama. I locked the door behind me, set the alarm, walked to my car. Tomorrow was another day, new customers to serve, new problems to solve, new opportunities to build. I had work to do. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.